Hello, Prime Minister Trudeau. My name is Craig Kindree-Gross, and as you may be well aware, my team and I have been commissioned by the Canadian government to render a royal proclamation, and with it, a wampum belt design as part of an effort to further the national project of reconciliation. My video to you today serves as a briefing of the wampum belt design along with its symbols, and also a reminder of some of the pertinent challenges that Canada should be considering and seeking to address as part of the reconciliation process. Now, to begin, I would like you to take a look at the proposed wampum belt design that we sent you last week for review. As you can see, Prime Minister, the wampum belt includes multiple elements which are all significant, from the color of the belt itself to the 5 distinct symbols we've chosen to include. Now, for a little bit of historical context, the wampum belt has existed for hundreds of years as a legal instrument to record treaties and agreements, especially between Indigenous nations and colonial governments. As such, we chose the colors of the belt to pay respects to the wampum belt's legal history and its legal significance, white and purple being the colors of the shells that were traditionally used to make these belts. Now, on to our first symbol on the wampum belt, and that is the grizzly bear paw all the way on the far left of the belt. Now, the grizzly bear paw is a symbol that is imported and takes inspiration from a landmark Supreme Court of Canada case regarding the Ktunaxa Nation and their belief in the grizzly bear spirit. If you recall, in that case, the Supreme Court of Canada failed to recognize and acknowledge the importance of the Ktunaxa Nation's spiritual belief, and thus the court did not extend protection to their land when they were clearly entitled that protection. As a symbol, the grizzly bear paw represents Canada's commitment to acknowledging Indigenous beliefs going forward, and this acknowledgement has to be on the same level as any other religious or spiritual belief. And this acknowledgement also includes adopting Indigenous spiritual beliefs, taking that into consideration when making any decisions regarding land-related endeavors. As opposed to the grizzly bear paw symbol, which represents Canada's commitment to acknowledging the significance of Indigenous people's spiritual beliefs and beliefs regarding the usage of land, the heart symbol, the second symbol on the wampum belt, represents Canada's commitment to incorporating Indigenous perspectives into the law. In many ways, the Canadian legal system as it stands presupposes that Western ideologies and Eurocentric perspectives are the law. We see this in the court's use of problematic doctrines, such as the doctrine of Christian discovery. These Western perspectives ultimately leave no room for Indigenous worldviews, and as such, the law often fails to operate in a fair and equitable manner for Indigenous peoples. As such, the heart symbol stands for restructuring the institutions of the Canadian government to incorporate Indigenous worldviews so that there can be more fair and equitable decisions in the legal system going forward in the future. The symbol in the middle of the wampum belt is one of great importance, as it truly represents the very foundation of this nation. The symbol is a three-part symbol consisting of the sun, a flowing river, and grass. Now, this symbol is drawn directly from treaties made between Indigenous nations and the Canadian government. Often, this treaty stipulated that they would last as long as the sun shines, the rivers flow, and the grass grows, and this is just a statement of the treaty's legal significance and its continued importance as a legal instrument. Now, as such, we have chosen to adopt this three-part symbol to represent Canada's recognition of all binding treaties and their commitment to rectify and make good on all their past promises. No longer should the Canadian government be ignoring its obligations under treaty. This country would simply not be what it is today without those agreements, and so to call this a just society, the Canadian government must enforce its legally binding treaties. The fourth symbol is of an arrow encircling the number 10. The number 10 represents and draws from the practice of counting to 10 in order to recall creation stories. Now, the practice of counting to 10 is often associated with the Haudenosaunee. However, we wanted to expand the idea, and that idea is that knowledge and practices are vital to cultures, and in this case, Indigenous cultures. As such, the symbol represents the Canadian government's commitment to protecting Indigenous cultures and specifically languages. Languages are thought by many to be the basis of unique perspectives and culture, really. And as such, it is long past time for the Canadian government to offer protection to Indigenous languages and the resources needed. It should be the goal of the Canadian government to get to the point where Indigenous languages sit on the same ground, are afforded the same protection and resources that languages such as French and English are afforded. Lastly, the fifth symbol, all the way to the right of the wampum belt, is of a fish. The fish symbol is a call for the Canadian government to recognize Indigenous water relations in a meaningful way and also to address the systemic water crisis that disproportionately affects Indigenous communities. Now, the Canadian government must first acknowledge that water and its protection is essential to the belief systems of many Indigenous communities and also their way of living. Water cannot be simply treated as a resource that can be taken advantage of or divided. As such, the Canadian government has a responsibility to work directly with Indigenous nations to address these concerns regarding water and to provide all Indigenous communities with equal access to clean water. The five symbols depicted on the wampum belt represent but a few of the pertinent issues that Canada must address and rectify in order to begin advancing the process of reconciliation. Being in the form of a wampum belt, Canada's statement is that the nation is agreeing to carry out the promises and commitments within the binding framework of Indigenous law. My team and I are confident that if Canada follows through with all that is proposed within the wampum belt, the nation will be making great strides towards reconciliation. With that, I hope that you learned something tonight, Prime Minister, and I hope that you can take some of this knowledge and use it to expand your perspective in the future. Thank you very much.